animosity.
Welcome to tonight's show. Tonight our guest is Jessica, a political philosopher, who's going to talk to us about religious freedom. Hi, Jessica. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Well, I'm Jessica D. Dubio. I specialize in political philosophy and I work mainly on analyzing religious political discourse in multi-religious societies.
That's so interesting. Tell us about your recent findings.
In multi-religious societies, the government issues laws to handle the rights and duties of the varied religious groups. In an attempt to take a neutral position, it advances a legislation that guarantees religious freedom for all. It does so to undermine possible interreligious tensions between groups.
And this is exactly how our government succeeds in having those religious groups live side by side, isn't it?
That is correct, Lucy, but it also creates a theological problem.
What do you mean?
From one side, there are religious rights.
Of course. The right to believe whatever you want.
Correct, and from the other side you have religious duties.
Is there an issue with that?
Yes. There are actually several issues.
Oh.
One issue is theological. Religious doctrine allows no room for freedom of belief. The other is political. It relates to how religious groups position themselves between other religious groups. The theological issue is that believers are commanded to believe in their own God only. There is no place for other gods. About this issue, there is a vagueness in the claim that there is only one God. I'll illustrate with a small animation movie first, and then I'll elaborate on the vagueness. I will have to ask the crew to start the video.
There is only our God. All the other gods are false. They are evil and not worthy of our devotion, prayer and sacrifice.
Yes, only our God has the right to be worshipped. Okay, back to the studio. Lucy?
Okay, what is your point?
If we understand religious freedom as a right to believe, then there emerges a tension between that right to believe whatever you want and the duty to believe what your theology dictates you to believe.
But then aren't people free to believe what they want?
No, because their religion forbids them to do so. Religious freedom and religious duties overrule each other.
I'm not sure I understand. Can you give an example?
Sure. As a Christian, you can't just say that you also believe in the Hindu elephant god Ganesh. Because belief in Ganesh has no place in Christianity. You cannot call yourself a Christian if you also believe in Ganesh.
Okay, but who are you to decide whether a person is a true believer?
It's not me who decides that. It's the religion that does so.
Okay. I see.
I need to explain the vagueness. There is only one God. We see this in Judaism, Christianity and Islam. But what does that mean? That only one God exists? From the scriptural point of view, this is not correct. Several gods are mentioned in the Tanakh and even in the New Testament. None are said to be non-existent. They are presented as less powerful than the main God character. Also in the Quran, non-Islamic gods are mentioned, for instance, Lat, Manat and El-Uzza. They are not considered non-existent, but they should not be considered as having a place in the strict monotheism of Islam. Ironically, believers of the gods of those three religions should also believe in the existence of the other gods mentioned in the scriptures, but they should regard them as less powerful. In that sense, henotheism is a better categorization than strict monotheism.
I see. So a monotheist as such doesn't exist. If I'm correct, it explains why our God is the greatest. If there are no other gods, then the comparison is impossible. If there is only one thing of something, it cannot be the greatest, and it might as well be the smallest God. That is a really funny insight I get there. I'm sure the audience is on the same boat about this.
Yes. Isn't it? Now we have the political issue. Believers have to say there is religious freedom. But actually they know they don't mean it. They basically can't from a theological point of view.
Oh, yeah.
They have to profile themselves publicly as if they want religious freedom, but they'd rather reserve that freedom to themselves.
Very interesting. What can they do about it?
Nothing. They have to exploit to advance the right to religious freedom. Because if they would be honest, and they would follow their theology, they would not allow others the freedom of religion. It's ironically reminiscent of John Rawls' theory of justice, where justice is that one person cuts a cake and the other person takes a piece. It forces one to cut up just pieces. But here the justice is a disadvantage to the religious group. It is to share its power with others. Religions don't like sharing. They want everything. Especially the monotheistic religions. Religions like Hinduism theologically and internally don't claim monolatry. They do so in a nationalistic framework, and that illustrates their political dimension. There is no sharing of the cake.
That's striving for power. I'm still not sure I understand.
I know it's a complex issue. For that I also have a small animation ready. Crew, please roll the tape. Let there be religious freedom for all.
But your theology says that other religions are false.
We have to say that, because if we would claim exclusivity, then we lose our position of neutrality. So we have to act as if we all agree with other people's religious freedoms.
So, basically, you hide behind a general right, because if you would be honest, you would have to state that everyone has the duty to believe in only your religion.
That is correct.
So if you would be honest, you would have to say, let there be a general freedom of religion to believe specifically in only my religion. Everyone is free to be obliged to believe in my religion.
That is correct.
I see. The call for religious freedom is in essence disingenuous, because if it were honest, it would self-destroy that general right to the freedom of religion. People are not happy with that conclusion. But what is there to do?
I think that believers need to be more honest to each other. Of course, without resorting to physical violence. If freedom of religion would be really an honest wish, believers would have no problem with apostasy.
That is correct. Unfortunately, we don't see that emerge yet. It seems tensions are on the rise. Wouldn't then the right to the freedom of religion help to keep society peaceful?
From a theological point of view, there is no such thing as freedom of religion. Also from a social point of view, freedom from religion is a hard choice made by individuals. I clearly say from, because apostasy is a step away from a particular religion. Apostasy is an act of choice, prioritizing the individual over the group. But from a political point of view, governments need to make such ideologically contradictory decisions. I guess the incommensurability of these different factors is what keeps religious groups living side by side in relative peace.
I see.
So, to recap, freedom of religion from a theological point of view is a disingenuous position. Believers, however, have found it useful to safeguard their religion in a society where they have no power.
Very interesting. So, it is not entirely honest.
Yes. And things get worse when believers claiming the right to the freedom of religion actually state that their religious laws overrule the so-called man-made laws of the country.
Yes, and?
Well, they utilize those very so-called man-made laws to advance their theocratic laws. This is also a red thread that runs through the contradictory issue of the freedom of religion. For instance, believers claim their secular rights to the freedom of religion in order to reject those very secular rights. For instance, some Islamists use the secular value of freedom of speech to claim that Islam is the solution for the West.
How interesting.
In other cases, some people did crimes in the name of their religion, but then want a fair trial before a man-made court with man-made laws.
Yes, I see your point. Now, what would you recommend believers who struggle with this issue you have just described?
I think they don't want to see this issue, or they will just ignore it, because they have no other means to power to install a theocracy than true secular laws.
A very interesting discussion, Jessica D. Dubio. Let's give her a round of applause. This is also the end of the show for today. Have a nice evening and see you soon.
Subscribe and debate.